Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sparing Partners. This is Monica Paolini, and from Senza Fili, and I am your host. And my guest today is Dario Betti, who is the CEO at MEF, the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. And it's a pleasure to have Dario, who is also a friend on the podcast, because we're going to have the chance to talk about something that is very helpful, useful, and not so much hype. So we're going to talk about, well, actually, there is a little bit of hype, but not as much as any other things that we are now going to mention. And that is RCS. And so we're going to talk about why is it important? Why did we not talk now and not, we didn't talk like a year ago or a year from now. And so Dario, welcome to Sparing Partners.
Thank you, Monica. It's great to be here.
Okay, tell us what you do at MEF, which is you do a lot of things and are all very interesting. So give us a taste.
Well, MEF, Mobile Ecosystem Forum, is soon to be 25 years old as an industry association and not for profit. We have our story begins with the Entertainment Forum, which is now becoming an ecosystem forum. Our members that used to be playing with things as a ringtone in mobile in the year 2000 are now big companies that do multiple things, including marketing, a solution for enterprises, different services, connectivity, wholesale. Now, what I do is a lot of things because we're not a huge company, but we are globally, and our team of 30 odds people globally is working across enterprise communication services. There's a B2B element in mobile, which is becoming huge and has provided a lot of new areas. We'll talk about it RCS today. We still cover things such as payments and identity and content and wholesales and mobile applications, all of those under the big umbrella, which is MEF. But equally, there are new things that are happening. SMS has not been a new thing, but people have realized how big things are. RCS, WhatsApp is now providing new mobile use cases and applications. Very simple things that make a lot of sense for the industry out there. We equally talk about mobile edge. We talk about things such as private networks. We talk about IoT. Some of those are probably be more embryonic inside. They're not as big, but everything might be happening. And there's a lot of interest in learning and understanding. But what really makes MEF different, and to some of your listeners, there are two MEF, I'm sure, in this market. So maybe you'll touch upon that. You might know MEF Forum, which started as a Metro Ethernet Forum, and now is MEF Forum doing other things. And we also changed. We were the Mobile Entertainment Forum, now the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, still known as MEF, but two separate organizations. We don't do technical standards, but what we do is we bring together in a forum the entire value chain. So our 240 members include mobile operators, solution vendors, but equally banks, retailers, supermarkets. You mentioned it. Everybody which is involved in the end-to-end complex value chain, which is mobile today. And back to your questions, what we do, well, a bit of everything, but bringing together people, letting them discuss, learning, and sometimes we have a more institutional role as well in terms of impact and lobbying and representation of the industry as well.
And you do a lot of meetings, and actually Senza Fili is a member. And so I go to many of them. And actually what you say is absolutely right, because it's really a place where you can talk to not just the operator and the vendors, but also the customers, so to say, the businesses. And that's really important because oftentimes, whenever I go to a meeting, it's either one group or the other. And really what we need in the system is in industry is the ecosystem. We need to be able to talk to each other so that we can help each other and also make money from each other in a way. That's the way to do it, is to be able to talk so you understand what you need so I can do it. And so that's very interesting. Okay, so RCS is the topic of the day. Why? I mean, RCS has been around forever. This is like APIs, right? Been around forever, but then all of a sudden, like everybody's kind of like, oh, we need to talk about it now. So why? What happened, and what's changing?
RCS had many lives, and as you probably know, it started in I think in the mid 2000, if you want, as a version of instant messaging, and it didn't really get to very far until and almost died until Google, which was looking for a solution for his Android devices as something that would be able to cooperate, or if you want, to compete with iMessages. It was very strong on the Apple side. So Google then joined the RCS world, and they give a second wind to this project. But many people kept on looking and said, this is not SMS, because SMS, the greater things of SMS is the global stance of SMS, is working on every phone. It's universal. RCS doesn't have that. It was intended to be the new SMS, but it doesn't. Well, that was definitely true until an announcement exactly almost a year ago when Apple said, yes, fine, okay, we will introduce support. You can still use our iMessage solutions, but you will then be able to communicate with an Android device equally on a person-to-person side by using RCS. So you can still use text messages just like SMS, but now you got pictures, etc. Now, what's important is people don't make any more money on the person-to-person messaging anymore. But the market for enterprise communication using messaging is huge. And that goes from a simple one-time password to information where your delivery is arriving. So notification, customer support, conversational support as well. So that is a billion-dollar industry, but many, I mean, pick your figures, but it may go to 60 to 80, 90 billion dollars every year spent on SMS for enterprises. So it's a sizable business in there. And so RCS with the enterprise and the rich now offering, because Apple would support the enterprise solution as well, version, is all of a sudden a very interesting platform, very close to SMS. And meanwhile, WhatsApp, that for many years was a very successful yet not monetizable channel for Meta Group as well, has now started to see some of the results as well. So in the market, we are seeing it's a competitive market, but it's a rich market. It's a nice market to be in, and now people can bet on different horses as well. RCS has got a good standing. It does reach more than a billion customers already last year, so it's a sizable platform already, and will have a universal reach by. And I think this is where you have to guess a bit, because the Apple rollout has not fully commence, let's say, everywhere, specifically also for the enterprise communications. But that's all coming. So give it another 12 to 18 months. Just like SMS was universal by then, RCS will be within smartphones universal and still available to reach out some of the, as an SMS, simple text message, some of the feature phones out there. So you might have a solution that really works. So excitement is coming because the numbers, that so much important scale you will have. And in some markets, it will be a much bigger scale for some of the OTT platforms. In some markets, let's face it, potentially, you geographically the difference in Europe and Latin America, what's up? It could be Kakao in Korea, it could be Line in Japan, but there are other OTT platforms that are very strong as well, and potentially they'll have to compete head to head.
Now, scale is absolutely essential, but what's the point of having scale if you don't have an advantage in terms of functionality, in terms of what you can do? And what I saw in your last meeting was like the latest use cases of RCS, and they were actually really interesting because it just seems like it's an opportunity to kind of scale up text messaging to a point where people are using less. Well, we used to use email for all sorts of things, and people are just moving away from email in general. And this could be really like a very interesting platform to facilitate that. I don't know whether that's what you think about it, but maybe you can talk about, first of all, what is that? If you have SMS, what do you need RCS for?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're a company, I mean, not from a network, not so much from a network point of view.
Well, that's very, very valid. I mean, SMS is successful, and long live SMS, because SMS still has got quite a bit left in its tank. It's simple, the use case works, it's universal. If you have to send a one-time password, potentially that's very simple and effective ways of using it. There are, however, potentially free elements to RCS, right? And some of the OTT platforms are there. The first one, very simple to say, it's multimedia. Now, SMS is only text, very simple, but this one you can actually, if you are talking about more advanced things, support, is that the picture, what you're looking at, is that what you want to buy? Or if you are using it for some of the interesting use cases, email, I mean, boarding pass were sent by email, to emails as well in PDF as well. It was a bit of a strange relationship. You have to open the emails, then open the PDF, showing the PDF, but where is your email? Because you got millions, you have to search for it, etc. Now, the inbox instead of your mobile phone, luckily in your SMS inbox, which will be the same as your RCS, is much cleaner, tends to be, and has been helped by the fact that it's less spam. So that would be a much easier way to go back and find out the conversation with a specific airline, and also change your seats and other things, which you could do them within the messaging app itself, because it's multimedia, it's easier. So that's, the ease of use in comparison to other channels is email replacing rather than SMS. But the third point is really security. Now, one thing that SMS was not designed, or SS7 was not designed in the 1977, wasn't it, when it was standardized? So it's in 1977, different music, different things, different telco world. 1977, there was not the cyber crime that we expected. It was, telcos were monopolies, where, potentially was a very nice but boringly quiet industry, where things were not so lively and so many interconnections and different players which you didn't know about. So that, apologies for the term, but gentleman club, which seems to be in the 1970s, is definitely not today. And that has opened up a lot of questions about the overall sustainability as a fraud mechanism for SMS. Lots of attacks. We as MEF are managing anti-smishing solution in 3 countries, not 4. So there's a lot of things that can be done, but nevertheless, you're dealing with a technical infrastructure that is not meant to protect specifically the enterprise solutions. I mean, SMS messaging was not envisioned itself as an SSM service in the 70s. So we've now expanded. But the RCS platform, the good news about the RCS platform is that has been designed since the beginning with 2 different logical areas, one for the person-to-person messaging and one for the A2P, the application to person messaging, or eventually also the people to application messages. There's a 2 ways element in there. So that provide a much better tools to limit the fraud. So those 3 things, I would say. It's a question of being multimedia, but it's also a question of multi-use cases, because now the interactivity allows you to do multiple things. But finally, it's also really the questions of providing a better anti-fraud framework around the technology itself. Now, that doesn't mean that RCS will be fraud-free. As we know, fraud is difficult things. You have to fight it all the time. But having more tools, it's a relief for a lot of the people out there and some of the enterprises out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it really is a sort of a step up. So it's still everybody's going to still be using SMS. It's not gonna go away, but it's really like a better way to kind of realize that there is a lot of kind of bread and butter services, and I mean it in a good way, something that people rely on every day. We're mentioning boarding passes. I mean, who prints? Well, you might print a boarding pass, but everybody has this on their phone. To make it more convenient, it's good, because right now everybody uses a different. I mean, it's still kind of a little bit of a hack,
Yeah, and
not consistent.
I think a response to in the early 2010s, if you want, and then later, so it was obviously the app explosions, and everybody was so happy to download the apps. But we've now seen the latest of the last 8 years. By the way, at MEF, we do a consumer survey every year. People are starting to engage in getting the idea that their phones have got too many apps they don't use. They don't want to download an app for every use case you might have. Which reminds me, you might be flying with this specific airline today to continue with a boarding case, but tomorrow is going to be another one, and you might not using them again for multiple years. So why should they sit on your phone? As a user get a bit disenchanted by this customer experience, which also feels like I need to download something just for use it once. But the beauty of the messaging platform is you don't have to download anything. It is just a message you send to somebody and you go, and it's immediate. So the email was still seen by some as preferable, but email now, unfortunately, because of spam, because of issues, because of the limitation in the user experience, it's now being liked by fewer and fewer people. It's your backup. It's your backup office. You always ask and send me an email as well, but you don't want to use your email when you are in a queue or something like that.
Exactly. You want to have something that is just much more immediate because you will use it for all sorts of small things. And so, we often tend, I think, not to talk much about it because it's really, not too sexy to talk about this kind of like, okay, you have to get a boarding pass on a plane, how exciting is that? But that's actually a lot of the value that we get from a phone is that. And so, individuals are not going to pay. So it's not going to contribute to the ARPU, but is going to contribute to the revenues from businesses, which is much more promising sector in terms of monetization, I would say.
Yep. And even for us as a mobile ecosystem forum, we now have two big areas where we group things. One is mobile services, which are associated with the traditional ARPU. And by the way, there's a lot of unsung heroes, direct carrier billing, still making lots of money in lots of places. So it's not payments is happening in a lot of places, wallets, et cetera, and wholesale and all the other things we do. But the enterprise communication, which does not directly respond on a user or an enterprise telephone bill, so to speak, but these are important markets where the mobile phone is an element of, one-time password, which is authentication, is driving a lot of SMS. So what you're buying, you're not buying a mobile service. You're buying an authentication service. They can send you a 4-digit codes we can use and confirm that you have received that on a mobile phone, which is yours. You have a very important. So there's been regulation that helped the industry to grow in this way. Potentially, there's going to be additional regulation, additional things that needs to be done now. But that still opens up the questions is people got used to this new way of doing things or receiving a single password, a confirmation that your parcel will be delivered tomorrow. And that little notification, it now means a lot to people. It's got a sizable, value, which people can actually relate to. It touches everybody. It's the hand of everybody. And every enterprise, as part of a post-COVID, had to realize that digitalizing their experience meant to mobilize their experience. And so SMS was even there, used a lot. And now, potentially RCS, or I should say WhatsApp, or Facebook Messenger, who knows, whatever tools there might be. But that experience is definitely moving outside of mobile, potentially outside of SMS as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because on one end, it just goes against the kind of one app where for everything you do, you need a different app. Which is not, it just doesn't seem like the best way to go. If you only do a few things, that's okay, but then it doesn't scale on your phone.
Exactly.
And then on the other hand, you don't want to be using email because it's a little bit more like it's referenced, but not really. You need to have a more streamlined experience.
And we will experience and see what happens. But I think they're all saying there's an app for it is bad. There are too many apps for too many bands. You want to select the relationship where you're going to call back and have an app with all the additional functionalities, but also have a light touch experience for things you might want to be able to do in a couple of steps and back and without a big, long commitment. I think that's going to be a new phase for us to understand what we call it conversational commerce. So the idea that people become messaging and the AI and other things are helping to make that happening now. You can actually talk to things. Application to people sounded very bad things a few years ago because it sounded like you had to learn a language to respond to something or to kind of find your ways around. it will be possible to actually talk to a brand and to have a meaningful conversation with real value without having to learn anything. That's is not something we are seeing today, but only the beginning, I guess. But that's going to change a lot of the things you're saying. That's the exciting parts of AI. That's kind of a building the super highways, which will allow us to do some of the great things that we're now getting excited about with AI. You need a channel to speak or to text to AI.
Yes, absolutely. Now, a lot of the things that RCS can do, it's also something that APIs are getting into or they are into. And so, how should we think about it? Is RCS and APIs going to be competing, helping each other? What's the relationship there?
It's interesting. We talk about APIs a lot, and in the telco APIs and the different flavors of telco APIs in the world. I mean, authentication is it's an example where you can see that there's an overlap, and a bit like a layer. Sometimes you might want to think that there are different level of interactions you might want sometimes. You know, you might want the light touch interaction, a very secure one. And sometimes if I'm talking about moving money from my bank account, please use the most secure one. And I might be happy to spend potentially more or less money or more or less time on it. But there's a lot of authentication that happens on a day-to-day basis. So I think horses for courses in my way. So we might have different tools available, and that's a good thing. There are lots of APIs. Telco APIs has got an issue, which is got almost a marketing issue. It includes a lot of things that are outside of the scope of RCS as well. I mean, quality of service and so on. We're probably going more esoteric, very interesting nature, but they don't really touch on each other. So I think there's a great complementarity in theory. There's some overlaps. Realistically, though, we have an opportunity for, and that's why we talk to our members, which are a lot of the people selling services to enterprises, to find channels to market for telco APIs via the people that have been selling SMS and RCS right now. The commercializations, if we're going hand in hand, would have been much easier, much better. The problem we had is those two have not talked to each other until, well, yesterday. And we are almost, our role at MEF is trying to work out on the commercial models, which might talk more of a customer language. Going to the word selling telco APIs doesn't excite most of it. Enterprises are there. But talking about use cases that are authentication, service delivery, and those are really what they matter. And in that case, you don't want to go just with one tool and say that's the only thing you will ever need. Potentially customizations and listening to their needs means you might have the different versions. And I think I look at telco APIs and RCS living happily in the toolbox of some of the CPaaS, UCaaS, whoever you might want to say, some of the telcos players are there that will talk to an enterprise and say, I can help you doing a better job with that, a more efficient job, a more customer friendly job, or sometimes even just getting more money. So those are all things that the industry can do. But we need to learn speaking a different language and understanding the value of each one of the tools, not just playing one tool against each other.
Yeah, and I guess that there is also an increasing number of partners that, as I was working on the report on APIs, it turns out that they do SMS and APIs, and it's part of the because okay, let's say authentication. You have a customer that has needs for authenticate the users, and they might need to do it in different ways, and then the company is able to help them and say, this is what you need. This is what you need. You don't have to call them API, RCS. You don't have to call them anything. You know, in a sense that the customer needs authentication. They don't need APIs. Whether
Exactly.
that's APIs or it doesn't matter. You just need to find a solution to their problem rather than proposing a technology.
And I think APIs have helped the supply side to sell a solution to operators you might
Mhm.
need, but the operators that will try to sell APIs to the enterprises will find it that's a complete disaster. And I think that's exactly what you were saying. They will need to rethink what they have in terms of solutions. which is what's the language that the enterprise will want. And there is the good and the bad news in everything. There are strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes some telco APIs have got a great functionality, at looking at authentications, the silent solutions, isn't it great? But some of the silent solution might not work if you're on a Wi-Fi network. Well, some do,
Yes.
some don't. And so what do you do there? Don't make the hard decision being, the limitation for your customers. Find a solution which is lively and make sure that the life of the customers is what it matters. How do we make that easier? So if that's not the right time to use silent authentications, can you use something else? Is this a right, are you breaking a customer experience? You need to be silent because you better be fast. Or do you want to make it a big sign out there and say, hello, you're now signing something important. Please make sure that this is the right
Yeah.
thing you want to do. All of those is great things in the hands of a UX developer. And I think that's what we need all to retrain ourselves and becoming more about UX developers or a security solution vendor. I think both are two sides of the same coin. There's a trade-off between the two, but it is not about SMS or APIs anymore.
Absolutely. Now, monetization, whenever you talk about this, monetization comes up within 5 minutes typically. So what are the monetization opportunities? You mentioned that SMS is big, and it really is. And it's a kind of, not only it's big, but it's kind of nice and reliable. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to go away, even if RCS is part of it is a substitution, but it's not like the opportunity is going away, and in fact, it's growing. So how should we think about in terms of monetization when you have SMS, RCS, APIs, and whatever else?
Well, I think it goes back to some of the great roles that we've seen created in the last few years, where solution vendors would aggregate some of these and resell it and take away some of the complexities. Because for a long time, and that was a role of SMS, a role of MEF, we had SMS pricing models completely unrelated to the RCS pricing models, let alone the API models, where you could say that they come from a different perspective of value. I mean, there is a big scale in between the two. And I think all of that is almost daunting, and let alone the implications of having to invest and retrain your customer and your customer support services as well into different solutions. So the one successful people are the ones that manage to listen again, or listen, but also to operate and serve and integrate into existing enterprise solutions and existing enterprise services. And I think that's very important. The monetization of RCS struggled a lot in the beginning, and it wasn't just of the hygiene factor of scale, because people could not understand how to package it. And I believe right now API is suffering the very similar thing. It's very difficult. Apart from the pricing points, the market will manage itself. There is a way to see where eventually the right price will emerge. But right now, the way has been, and there have been interesting development with potential big aggregations already, but are they the right aggregation points? Are they the right solutions? It only depends on what you can present to the end user and how streamlined and user-friendly can be, or enterprise-friendly, I should say, can be in that case. I think there is a bit of learning, unfortunately, left on the table. We hope to amplify the learning and share it as quickly as possible between our members, but we can see the feedback from the industry as we're not there yet. But we will get there. I want to sound positive. There is potentially we need to do things better and faster. That's my view.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that there is a sort of growing realization that that's what you need to do, and there is a lot of pressure, because if you want to monetize, maybe you have to put more of an effort into it. It's not just saying people don't want to do it, or don't throw your arms up. Try to do something about it.
And I mean, there are multiple, elements. If you're comparing the monetization tools, again, is a question of scales. If you're looking at telco APIs, very good news, but there are still multiple players that don't support telco APIs. So in certain markets, you might have that solution available, but only for 20% of your customers, not for the others.
And
Another
that's
good reason.
a Yeah, that's a major issue. Yeah.
And that's another good reason why where we're talking about right now, it should not be seen as a competing solution between one and the other. And the role, if you are a telco, learn, and I haven't seen already that now happening. In telcos, there are sometimes two departments, one selling API, another one selling SMS, potentially RCS. Now,
Yeah.
that is potentially the beginning of the end because you are competing internally, not a good reasons necessarily, and you're not making a great use of the two together, which would be an augmentations of the power of what you can use. But you will end up mis-selling or selling for the lower common denominator in that case, and that's a recipe for value destruction very quickly. So there should be a single provider of enterprise services for authentication, for notification, for services, etc.
Yeah. Let me ask you a final question. Where is RCS going? Where are we today in terms of adoption, and how do you see the time frame going?
Well, that good news, the billion users, and we track users if you're ever interested, but um, that's already happening on the P2P side. So a lot of users have realized that they can send messages and send messages to Apple users as well. So RCS is finding its new role in the industry right now. Now, what's not happening anywhere, and we're talking in December, end of December, I think, right now, but soon, in a few more weeks, you will probably have more good news. But Apple business messaging with RCS, that's not happening. Now, that's going to make the big difference. So we're at the very beginning, and that's where we give ourselves another 12 to 18 months to see the true power of RCS, where you be able to use it across all customers and all devices. If you are in India or Mexico or Brazil, given the penetration of Android, or even Spain, I dare to say, possibly that's not a big thing. But big the US or UK or markets where Apple have got sizable, if not the majority of users, that's a big news. So I think we're still in a waiting time. But after that 18 months, I think there's going to be a real reliable and scalable solutions available, potentially sold with some of the telco APIs and additional values, and potentially competing with the very well-established OTT players as well, which would by then, have a very solid marketplace as well. So it's not going to be a complete go and conquer mission for RCS. There is going to be competition, but I think the scale and the support of the industry is now there, something that wasn't definitely available before.
Absolutely. It's very, very interesting. So we'll see what happens. So anyway, Dario, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It was very illuminating and inspiring.
Thank you for having me, Monica.
And thank you all for listening in. And please do subscribe to the podcast if you like it, and spread the word. Thank you